My father destroyed my dreams to protect his favorite child, but later I got my sweet revenge. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and my younger brother is 28. We grew up with our father, who is now 56. From the very start of high school, my dad always favored my brother, and over time I just got used to it. I was never the son my father wanted. Unlike him, I wasn't into sports or manly hobbies. Instead, I was drawn to things usually considered more feminine. Honestly, I was a bit of a mama's boy. I loved cooking, reading books, and even singing. My father tried to push me into playing football with him, but I was terrible at it. Eventually, the gap between us grew wider. My brother, on the other hand, was exactly the son my dad always dreamed of. Strong, fearless, never afraid to get dirty or even hurt, he was perfect in my father's eyes. Dad would talk about him with pride and admiration, words he never once used for me. My mother, however, treated us equally. She was fair, loving, and because of that, I adored her more than anyone else. I truly tried to repair my relationship with my dad and spend more time with him, but after we drifted apart, he showed no interest in reconnecting. Sadly, the glue that held our fragile family together was my mum, and when she was diagnosed with cancer, it was already too late. She passed away before we could even process what was happening. Her death shattered me completely. The only comfort I had left was in the kitchen. I cooked something new every single day as if my life depended on it. My mum had been an amazing cook, and she used to tell me that if she hadn't been forced to take over her father's business, she probably would have become a professional chef. Cooking became my way of feeling close to her. Meanwhile, my dad and brother offered me no emotional support. They bottled up their own grief and became even more distant. Instead of drawing us together, the tragedy tore us apart. My passion for cooking infuriated my dad. He would yell at me to get the hell out of the kitchen and do something manly for once. One day, when he completely lost his patience, he threatened to make me do every single chore in the house if he ever caught me cooking again. He demanded that I be more like my brother. That fight escalated into a screaming match, during which I finally shouted that he had never loved me. His response? He agreed. That was the moment everything spilled out, and in truth, it was the last honest conversation we ever had. From then on, I stopped trying to earn his approval, and he didn't care to give it. For years, I spent most of my time shut away in my room, listening to music and studying recipes. I became determined to build a career as a chef, not only for myself, but also to honor my mother's memory. My dad and I only spoke when absolutely necessary, and my brother ignored me just like Dad did. After my mum's death, I was basically left with no one I could truly rely on. Finally, when it came time to apply to college, I sent out applications to several top culinary schools, as well as a few regular colleges. I wasn't sure if my father would support me, but I had to at least try. That summer, I secretly worked as an intern at a restaurant to gain experience, and I even earned a letter of recommendation that gave me a huge advantage. To my delight, I was accepted into multiple schools, including one of the best culinary institutes in France. I was beyond excited, though also nervous, because I knew I'd have to ask my father for permission and financial support. I was prepared to beg if I had to. I wasn't going to give up on my dream under any circumstances. So I finally told him everything. I expected him to dismiss it as not a real man's career, but I wasn't prepared for what actually happened. He flat out refused to pay for my education. I'll never forget how stunned I felt. Money wasn't the issue. My dad wasn't poor. He could easily have afforded to send me to France. The real reason? He didn't want my success to make my younger brother feel insecure. My brother was already struggling with school, and according to my father, sending me to a prestigious culinary academy would unfairly overshadow him. Instead, he insisted I attend a local college or figure out how to pay for my dream myself. I was crushed. My own father had deliberately destroyed my future, all to protect the ego of his golden child. After countless tears and arguments, when my father still refused to change his mind, I finally lost it. I exploded at him, said things I had been holding back for years, and walked out of his house for good. From that day on, I moved in with my mother's oldest sister, my aunt. The only reason I hadn't gone to live with her earlier was because I wanted to stay in the same home where I'd grown up with my mum, and I didn't want to switch schools, which I would have had to do if I moved in with my aunt since she lived far away. I told her everything, how my dad flat out refused to pay for my education and how desperate I was. Asking her for help felt awful, especially such a large sum of money, because she wasn't wealthy like my father, but she promised me she would make it work. Somehow, she and a few of her friends pooled their resources and made it possible for me to attend my dream culinary school. I will forever be grateful to her for that. Once I got there, I worked part-time and threw myself into my studies, determined to make every penny worth it. I worked harder than I ever thought possible and steadily climbed my way up. By the time I graduated, I was recognized as one of the most talented chefs in my class, and I landed a position at a prestigious French restaurant just months after finishing school. Half of my salary went straight back to my aunt so I could repay her bit by bit. Honestly, I was lucky I didn't have to take out student loans. If I had, I might still be drowning in debt. I spent several years in France, saving up until I had enough money to return to the US and eventually open my own restaurant. For a few years, I worked as a head chef at another establishment, all while chasing my ultimate goal. Finally, just a few weeks ago, my dream became reality. I opened a restaurant of my own. Two close friends I met in France joined me as CO owners, and they kindly let me choose the name. Naturally, I named it after my mum. Her name was rare and beautiful, and it fit perfectly. Things were finally falling into place. A few nights ago, we hosted a small private event before the grand opening. Of course, I invited my aunt and the friends who had helped fund my education, along with a couple of high school friends. My father and brother, however, were not invited for obvious reasons. I hadn't spoken to them since I left home, and they had never once tried to contact me, but as I should have expected, they showed up anyway, trying to leech off my success. They arrived an hour early, and the security didn't stop them since they had the same last name. They claimed they were there to surprise me. Well, surprise me they did. My father and brother greeted me as if nothing had ever happened, overly warm and cheerful, probably for the first time in my life. I froze when I saw them. Thankfully, my friends noticed my discomfort and politely excused themselves, giving us space. I'll always appreciate them for that. Then my father handed me a painting, a portrait of my mother. He said he had it commissioned specifically for me to hang in the restaurant. He explained that as soon as he heard about a new trendy spot opening in town with my mum's name, he knew it had to be me. He even had the nerve to add that he always knew I had talent. My brother chimed in, claiming he was so proud of me. I almost laughed in their faces because it was so absurd. I kept quiet, waiting for the real reason they had come, and sure enough, they got to the point. My brother had ended up working as a bartender only because my dad begged a friend to give him a job at his club. His grades had always been awful. He'd lost interest in football, and without a scholarship, he wound up at a community college no one really aimed for. In other words, all the hopes my father had pinned on him went nowhere. Now, they wanted me to make him a partner in my restaurant so he could have a more respectable career even though he hadn't lifted a finger to earn it. I nearly burst out laughing, but instead I managed to keep a straight face and simply told them I'd think about it. Of course, I had no intention of doing so. I didn't want to reject them right away. I wanted them to stay at the party because I had a better plan in mind to humiliate the family that suddenly crawled out of the shadows the moment they heard about my success. They seemed comfortable, but they had no idea what was coming. As more guests arrived and the restaurant filled up, I spent the evening mingling and welcoming people. My father and brother wandered around too, chatting as if they belonged there. At one point, I overheard them bragging about me to some of the guests, which almost made me laugh out loud at their shamelessness. Toward the end of the evening, it was time for speeches from the hosts, my partners and me. My friends went first, then it was finally my turn. That night, I decided it was time to say everything I had kept bottled up inside for years. I started by thanking everyone for coming and raised my glass to my mother. It was her belief in me, even when I was young, that gave me the confidence to keep going. Even after she was gone, that faith never left me. After honoring her memory, I shifted my attention to the real point. I explained how I had to borrow money from my aunt and her friends just to attend culinary school, and I thanked them deeply. Then I laid out why I had to borrow in the first place: because of my family. I spoke openly about growing up with a father who never believed in me, constantly mocked me for being passionate about feminine things like cooking, and a younger brother who was just like him, I told everyone how my father flat out refused to pay for my education because he was afraid I'd surpass his golden child, my brother. That was the breaking point that drove me out of the house. But I reminded everyone that despite all that, I built myself up and became who I am today. In a way, I said they deserved a small bit of credit because their rejection forced me to become stronger than I ever thought I could be. The crowd's reaction was priceless. So many guests shot angry, disgusted looks at my father and brother. Even they were smart enough to at least pretend to feel ashamed, though I knew it was an act. Still, I walked over and hugged them, playing the same little performance they had staged when they showed up. Why not? Two could play this game. I announced that since they had come to celebrate my success, I was willing to forgive the past and even offer my brother a position as a bartender in my restaurant. To the audience, it looked like a touching moment of reconciliation. People clapped, some even whistled, but only my family, and I knew the truth that this was just my way of putting them in their place. And it worked. They had no choice but to smile and thank me, even though I could see how badly they wanted to storm out. Later, once most of the guests had left, my father and brother cornered me outside. They were furious. My brother's eyes were glassy with rage and humiliation. They demanded to know why I had done that to them. They shouted that if I had no intention of making him a partner, I should have just told them to leave. I laughed in their faces and said this was my way of paying them back for all the years of neglect and cruelty. I told them it was exactly what they deserved. Then I turned and walked away, not even flinching when I heard my brother shouting that I was cruel, that I'd regret this someday. I simply got into my car and drove off. That was only a couple of days ago, and I haven't heard from them since. My aunt thinks I might have gone too far and that I should have just had them thrown out immediately. But I don't agree. They had it coming, and I don't regret humiliating my father and brother in the slightest. Update: I decided not to reach out to them or apologize. My aunt still thinks I was too harsh, but I told her I feel zero guilt and won't pretend otherwise. They had a chance to apologize when they showed up, and they didn't. She dropped the subject after that, and I'm fine with us agreeing to disagree. Meanwhile, my brother has been running his mouth behind my back, spinning the story to our old schoolmates. He's telling people that I humiliated him and my father on purpose by serving them spoiled food before kicking them out. Of course, he exaggerated it to make himself look like the victim. Normally, I wouldn't care about petty rumors, but I don't want potential customers taking them seriously, so I texted him and said if he doesn't stop spreading lies about me and my restaurant, I'll make sure he loses the job he has now. Hopefully, that will shut him up because I have zero time or energy to waste on this nonsense. My focus is on my work, and honestly, this couldn't have come at a worse time. Update 2, my brother texted me back saying he'd only stop trashing me if I made him a partner. I don't even know what level of delusion he's living on. Besides, if he really wanted to become a partner, isn't it a bit ridiculous to publicly badmouth the very restaurant he claims he wants to join? I'm convinced this is just my father's tactic to get his golden child into a prestigious position without lifting a finger. Too bad for them, it won't work on me. I told my brother that if he doesn't quit, he'll be hearing from my lawyers. He's in no position to be making demands. The only reason I haven't taken action yet is because I don't want to waste my time on unnecessary drama. But if he tries to push me any further, I won't hesitate to tear him apart legally. I told him to take this as his final warning for his own good. Update 3, so it's been about a month since the last update. I've been extremely busy, but here's what happened. My brother actually did stop spreading lies behind my back, but that didn't mean they stopped trying to latch onto my success. A few weeks ago, my father and brother showed up at my house, trying to intimidate me. They threatened to sue me for using my mother's name for the restaurant, claiming they had already spoken to a lawyer. Their demand? Make my brother a partner or else. Of course, I knew right away it was all bluff. No sane attorney would take on such a ridiculous case. And besides, she was my mother too. There's no law that says I can't use her name to honor her. By then, I was beyond tired of their nonsense. I told them if they didn't leave me alone, I'd call the police. That's when my brother snapped and actually tried to grab me by the shirt. Thankfully, my father pulled him back before things escalated. Clearly, all the humiliation had finally gotten to him and he just lost it. But that wasn't my problem, and frankly, they were lucky I didn't call the cops right then. I told my father to get the hell out, but instead he sent my brother to wait in the car and asked to speak with me alone. He tried his usual manipulation. routine, saying that if my mother knew how I was treating them, she'd be deeply disappointed and that I should bury the hatchet. That was the last straw. I told him he needed to stop using my mother's memory as a weapon to guilt me. It was low, even for him. The truth is, we're way past reconciliation. Not once throughout this entire ordeal have either of them even attempted to apologize. So I don't know why they ever thought I'd forgive them without an ounce of remorse from their side. As for my mother, I'm certain she would have been just as disappointed when he refused to pay for my education, or every single time he made me feel worthless. He is the last person who gets to lecture me about what she would or wouldn't approve of. I know she's proud of me wherever she is, and nothing he says will ever change that. At the very least, my restaurant is thriving, and if everything goes according to plan, we'll be expanding soon.